Tony. Always the genius, always the billionaire. But here's the thing. You know as well as I do that deep down, it's not the suit that makes the man. I mean, really, how many more of those suits are you going to build? You've got more armor than a Roman centurion. But I'm not here to talk about the metal. I'm here to talk about the heart inside it. Now, I know you've been through a lot. We all have our moments, right? But let's talk about something serious. Redemption. You see, you've been out here saving the world, but sometimes the toughest battles aren't fought in space or against some guy with a purple glove. Sometimes, Tony, the biggest battle is the one you've been fighting in here. Taps his chest with a smile. And no, I'm not talking about your arc reactor. It's funny, really. You've got all this tech. You can fly, shoot beams, and make artificial intelligence like it's a Saturday hobby. But still, somehow it's the human part of you that's always glitching. Let's face it, Tony, your ego's got more horsepower than your latest suit. That's where the problem starts. You keep thinking you can save everyone, fix everything, and handle it all by yourself. But let me tell you something. True redemption doesn't come from fixing the outside world. No, it comes from fixing what's inside you. I know you've been trying in your own way. You've made sacrifices, and you've gone through the ringer. But here's the thing. Redemption doesn't come from what you can build or how many lives you can save with your technology. Redemption, Tony, comes from humility. And I'm not just talking about the kind of humility where you smile and pretend to listen during meetings. I'm talking about real humility, the kind where you admit that you can't do it all, that maybe, just maybe, you need help. Even Iron Man could use a little divine guidance sometimes. Think about it. You've built your entire legacy on power, control, and being the one who has all the answers. But the truth is, Tony, the strongest thing you could ever do is surrender that control, even just a little. That's where true strength lies. Not in the suit, not in the power of your tech, but in the power of your heart. And that's where you and I have something in common. Remember what I said in the book of Matthew? Blessed are the meek, for they will inherit the earth. Now, I know meek might sound like a bad word to you, but it's not about being weak, Tony. It's about being strong enough to know that you don't have to do everything alone. Sometimes you have to step back and realize that the real power doesn't come from the things you control, but from the things you let go of. Now, Tony, let's talk about something you're a little too familiar with. Pride. Look, I get it. You're Tony Stark, the guy who can outthink anyone in the room. You've always been the one with the plan, the one who just knows. You're like an encyclopedia with a smart mouth and a workshop full of fancy toys. But there's a problem with always being the smartest guy in the room. You start to rely more on your own knowledge than on real wisdom. And Tony, there's a difference. You know, in the book of Proverbs it says, "Trust in the Lord with all your heart, and lean not on your own understanding." Now, I'm not saying you should abandon that big brain of yours. I gave you that brain for a reason. But sometimes you get so caught up in your plans, your inventions, your ideas, that you miss the bigger picture. You're trying to fix everything, but you end up missing what really matters. Take Ultron, for instance. Not your best moment, my friend. You tried to create a suit of armor around the world. And what happened? You nearly destroyed it. That's the thing about pride. It convinces you that your way is the only way, that you're the only one with the solutions. But here's a tip, Tony. Wisdom isn't just about knowing the answers. It's about knowing when to ask for help. Remember that time you told everyone you were a genius, billionaire, playboy, philanthropist? Yeah, that was funny. But you missed one thing: humble. It's not too late to add that to your title, you know. Here's the deal. Pride will keep telling you that you don't need anyone else, that you've got it all under control. But the truth is, the more you rely on yourself, the more you close yourself off from the things that matter most. You know, back in my day, we had a word for that. We called it being lost. And don't get me wrong, lost isn't bad as long as you're willing to be found. You just have to stop pretending you know the way when you're clearly off course. So take a step back, Tony. You don't always have to be the guy with all the answers. Sometimes the smartest thing you can do is admit that maybe, just maybe, you don't know it all. And guess what? That's when you start to learn the things that really matter. And speaking of control, Tony, let's have a little heart-to-heart on that one. You've got this tendency to try and control everything, whether it's global security, a team of superheroes, or even your own emotions. But here's the truth, Tony. The more you try to control, the more things slip out of your grasp. Now, I know why you do it. You think if you don't control it, something bad is going to happen. You've seen the worst of humanity, the worst of the universe even, and you don't want to see it again. But let me tell you something, Tony. Control is an illusion. You can't control everything, no matter how hard you try. Not even with 100 Iron Man suits. And believe me, I understand wanting to save people. That's kind of my thing, you know? But here's the key. Saving people isn't about controlling them. It's about loving them. Compassion over control, Tony. That's the secret. Remember how I washed the disciples' feet? Now that's a humbling job. But it wasn't about the act itself. It was about showing them love in the most simple, selfless way. You want to save the world, Tony? Start with compassion, not control. People don't need you to be a savior in a metal suit. They need you to be present, to care, to be human. Here's the catch. Control is rooted in fear. You're afraid of what might happen if you let go. But compassion? Compassion is rooted in love, and love casts out fear. That's what I want you to remember. You can't control everything, and that's okay. Because love, real, genuine love, has a way of working things out that control never will. Now, Tony, I have to give it to you. You've made some pretty serious sacrifices in your time. I saw what you did with that snap. Gave me flashbacks to my own snap. You know, on the cross. But here's where I think you might be a little off in your understanding of sacrifice. See, sacrifice isn't just about the big, dramatic moments. It's not always about laying down your life in some world-ending showdown. Sometimes, the most powerful sacrifices are the quiet ones, the ones no one notices, the times when you choose others over yourself, even when it's inconvenient, even when it doesn't give you any glory. You've been willing to risk it all, Tony. But I think part of you did it because you felt like you had to. Maybe you felt like you were making up for your past mistakes, trying to balance the scales. But sacrifice, true sacrifice, doesn't come from guilt or the need to fix things. It comes from love. Take it from me. I know a thing or two about sacrifice. I didn't lay down my life because I was guilty or because I was trying to prove a point. I did it out of love. For you, for the world. And that's the kind of sacrifice that changes everything. So here's my advice. Stop thinking of sacrifice as something you have to do, and start thinking of it as something you get to do. You get to choose love. You get to choose to put others first, not because it's your duty, but because it's your privilege. And when you do that, Tony, you'll find that it's not about the suit or the power or even the big moments. It's about the heart behind it all. Now, Tony, let's talk about something a little heavier. Forgiveness. I know. Not exactly your favorite topic. You're not exactly a forgive and forget kind of guy. You've made enemies, you've been betrayed, and you've done your share of hurting people too. I get that. We all have scars. But the thing is, Tony, you can't keep carrying those scars like trophies. They're weighing you down. Let's talk about a couple of examples, like your buddy, Obadiah Stane. I know that one stings. Betrayal always does. But holding on to that anger, that's poison, Tony. It eats you up from the inside, whether you realize it or not. And Ultron, don't even get me started on Ultron. You created him with good intentions, sure. But things went south, and now you're carrying around all that guilt. But Tony, beating yourself up over past mistakes isn't going to change anything. In fact, it's only keeping you stuck. You've spent so much of your life trying to prove that you're better than your past. But you know what would be even better? Letting go of that past entirely. Giving yourself some grace. You don't have to earn forgiveness, Tony. That's not how it works. It's given, freely. All you've got to do is accept it. And here's the other thing. You've also got to forgive the people who've wronged you. That's tough, I know. But here's a little secret about forgiveness. It's more for you than it is for them. When you forgive, you let go of the weight they've had on your heart. You free yourself, Tony. And if you can forgive yourself and others, that's when real healing starts. It's not about erasing what's happened. It's about moving forward, lighter and freer, without the chains of the past holding you back.